when I was younger, I was obviously different, but not in a bad way, I guess.
Yeah.
Like people sort of celebrated that, as odd as that sounds,
Mm.
but it was more like intriguing or
Yep.
cool, I guess you could call it.
Yep.
I find that who are fairly new to being
Yep.
in a wheelchair or whatever, people that have been in like for a while, it's just something that you don't think about, I guess.
Mm.
And most people like that, they've come to terms with it, like
Yep.
myself.
Yep.
So I guess that's why it never comes up, because everybody's sort of just come to terms with what hand they've been dealt, I guess you can say.
Yep. Yep. Hello, my name's Mate, and you have tuned into episode 13 of the In-Betweeners Checkup. Today I'm joined by Slade, who's going to be sharing a little bit about his journey in life so far. And I think it's, from what I understand so far, it's really interesting, and I guess I'm keen for those who are listening to hear, I guess, from the horse's mouth, so to speak, what's happened during his life and how he's got to where he is now. So Slade, I'm going to pass it over to you, and you can offer, I guess, a little bit of an intro to those listening today.
Yep. So I guess my story started about almost 18 years ago, where I had my accident and I became a paraplegic. So I was just before my 7th birthday. So I'm 24 now. Yeah, so I guess that's where my life changed, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
In 2003.
Okay. And I guess, look, I mean, that's some time ago, but that still affects you today, in terms of that, I'm going to call it transition, as it were. Thinking back, is there much you can kind of remember about that overall experience?
No, I was pretty young, so I don't remember a whole heap. And I mean, if anything like this was to happen, it was probably a good age.
Yeah.
Because, still early in your life sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's at least how I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as kids, well, I like to think as humans we're adaptable, but as kids especially, we're constantly learning and developing, and we haven't necessarily got attached to certain ways of being as such, which means that when we're faced with adversity at a young age, then we can potentially adapt effectively. But at the same time, sometimes at a subconscious level, things can sort of be taken on board as well without us even realizing it. Sort of when you look back at your own journey, were there any sort of times where you perhaps realized that there was stuff there that was kind of sitting there in the background that you needed to work through?
Well, I mean, growing up I had a pretty good upbringing, I guess you could say. Like, when I first originally had my accident, I was in hospital for about 6 months, only because I didn't really have anywhere to go. And I was pretty lucky in the aspect that, because I had a few siblings and they went and moved in with a foster family that we knew quite well, or that my brother knew quite well. And then they ended up taking me in as well. So it's pretty lucky in the aspect that my siblings and myself stayed together, so we didn't get split up. So that sort of made, I guess, like you mentioned, the transition a little bit more easy. I guess it was still hard. Obviously, it's a big change being from like able-bodied to a paraplegic. But they made, they were real supportive. My siblings were real good, and sort of, I guess you could say, made it as easy for me as probably possible that I could have had.
Yeah. And I mean that speaks to me a lot of, I guess, the importance of family, really.
Yeah.
And look, it can be your biological family, it can be close friends or your foster family in this case. And when we go through adversity, having some form of support network around us, whether we're 6-7 years old, whether we're an adult. You know, it's really surrounding yourself with people who are genuinely there to support you in whatever way they can.
Yeah, well, with them, they sort of drilled into my head, and I always remember it as sort of a big bad word out there. Nobody really cares, I guess, and if you want anything, you've got to work hard, and the only person that can do it is you. Doesn't matter regardless of your ability or your inability. I mean, as harsh as it sounds, people don't care. I mean, in the nicest possible way. Like, that's what I think, at least. If I wanted to do something, or if I wanted something, then I had to do that. Like, for example, like, we're lucky in New Zealand, we have like ACC. So ACC helps a lot as well. But you just got to fight for everything, essentially. And that's something that they taught me from sort of get-go. Kind of helped me, like, into who I am today, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of that fight and such, what are some of the battles that you've, I guess, come across over the last little bit, and how have you sort of used that, I'm going to call it fire in the belly, so to speak, to get through it?
Yeah, well, I guess a lot of it comes down to mindset. Like, a lot of people that are in a wheelchair or just have their accident, it's quite common for people sort of in their teens or in their early adult life, and they struggle to come to terms with it. Whereas because I had mine so early, I didn't really struggle as much because I hadn't experienced like life, I guess you could say, prior to having my injury. And how do I word it? I'm not really sure how to word it.
I think what you're trying to say, and feel free to correct me here, is that I guess we as we grow, we can sort of get comfortable with certain aspects of our life, and if those aspects are changed, then it kind of brings us into the uncomfortable. So we can almost, I guess, become attached to these aspects, and because of your situation, and that you had initially become attached to a certain situation, that when that situation changed, it meant there was less of a, I'm going to say, grieving process that you initially had.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I mean, every day is obviously going to be hard. Like, it's going to take you that longer to get out of bed. It's going to take you that much longer to get out of the shower, get out of the car, that sort of thing. And there's always going to be stuff you can do, or can't do, sorry. But I mean, it's more just focusing, I guess, on what you can do. That's like what I could say to any people who had an injury or anything. Just focus on what you can do. I mean, like myself, growing up, I had quite a lot of surgeries, so that was pretty crap. That was probably one of some of the hardest things that I had to deal with growing up. There's a lot of like surgeries on my back, sort of thing, which kept me out of school. But I guess, yeah, everything's going to be just a little bit harder. But I mean, that's even like, once you achieve it, it's even a greater feeling, I guess.
So I guess tell us a little bit about what you've been able to achieve.
So, I mean, I guess with being in a wheelchair, it's giving me like opportunities, ironically, that many like normal people wouldn't have, I guess. Like, I've been to, where have I been? I've been to Australia a few times to play basketball. About 2 years ago, I went to China to play. So sport has really been a big part of my life, like playing basketball. And it's led me to a lot of like opportunities with like travel. I enjoy traveling. I've been to America a few times, and yeah, I mean, that's a great thing. Well, as bad as it sounds, that's quite a great thing about the disabled community is everybody knows everybody, and like you can still play sport. You can pretty much do everything that you'd normally be able to do if you were a able-bodied person. I guess you could say. Well, at least that's how I think of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I've got like friends. Like I do everything that a normal 24-year-old would do. I can still go out. I can still drive. I live by myself. Like I don't need help. I guess I'm quite lucky that I'm able enough to look after myself. I mean, I'd have a job. So, I mean, if I can do it, then anybody can, I guess.
Yeah. And like I think your mindset is what's really kind of coming out here, is that despite things perhaps being a little bit different for yourself, you're making the most of your situation, whatever that is. And I think for a lot of people out there who perhaps are in a different situation, I'm going to say.
Whereas I can understand, like it takes a while to process what's happened. Like, wow, my life has really changed. Like that does take a long time to sit in. But it's been my life for most of my life. And I mean, you've got two choices. You can sort of sit around and feel sorry for yourself, or you can just get on with it. I mean, those are your two choices, really.
Now, I think life threw you this curveball fairly early on in your years. And then, as I understand it, even more recently, you've had sort of significant things sort of shake your foundations, or to a degree perhaps as well, with a car accident as well.
Yeah, so about just over a year ago, it was last June. I got hit by a truck. I was on my way to work. It's about 6:30 in the morning, and I must have just missed it. I'm not sure, but apparently I pulled out in front. I don't remember anything, but apparently I pulled out in front of it. And yeah, I mean, lucky to only escape with some minor injuries. I broke my collarbone, my ribs, and my pelvis. So pretty lucky, really.
Wow. So I guess, look, some people go through their whole life not experiencing any real physical trauma. For yourself, you've already experienced two, and you're not even or maybe a quarter of the way through your life. And yet here you are today, of sound, mind and body, talking to me. What do you put that down to?
Recently, I mean, what I tell people is I'm either the unluckiest lucky person in the world, or the unluckiest lucky person in the world.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I don't know. Luck. That's all I can put it down to. Like, I shouldn't have survived that crash. Like, imagine getting hit front on by a truck and surviving. Like, it's pretty crazy when you think about it.
Yeah. And I guess when you went through that early experience, you were kind of early in your life and weren't necessarily thinking about all the implications of that. I guess coming into that situation more recently and being older and having a different perspective of life, did anything change for you mentally in terms of your outlook on the world?
Well, I mean, when I had my car accident last year, I was stuck in bed for about almost 3 months. So that was probably one of the hardest times of my life, being how old I am now, and being fairly independent, having to rely on people in that sense, and not being able to do basic stuff like get in and get out of bed and have a shower. Pretty crap on my mental. Again, I guess I had a good sort of supporting cast, so like with my siblings and my parents, helped me get through, I guess. But it was hard. So I can say it was really hard. And I just wanted to get back to normal, I guess. Imagine being in a wheelchair and only having the use of one arm. It's pretty tough, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, it healed and I'm back to normal, I guess. So it's just another thing to tick off my list, I guess.
Yeah, that's an interesting list you have. But I guess, I basically came across your details recently when there was an article on the sort of stuff, basically describing your situation. Was there anything that's kind of happened that's made you decide this is the time for me to share my story?
Well, it wasn't really me. It was more the person who wrote the article. I'm good friends with her sibling, and she met me when I very first had my accident 18 years ago. And she said that she'd always wanted to do a story. And I like, obviously I was quite young when I had my accident, so there was no story or anything. And I guess now that I'm an adult, I guess the timing was right.
Yes.
And I mean, with everything that's going on in the world, I mean, why not put some sort of happy news out there, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I think it's easy to get caught up in the negativity that is going on in the world at the moment. And as much as we can act as, I'm going to say, beacons of light, for want of a better term, if enough people shine brightly, it can make a difference. With respect to you talking about some of the struggles that people who perhaps find themselves in a wheelchair later in life, do you see an opportunity in that area specifically to assist others?
Well, I never looked at myself as that sort of person. I mean, I've just got on with life, never really thought about it. But I've had, like, since that article was published, I've had a few people message me on Facebook, actually, like, such as yourself, saying they just wanted to reach out. And, like, I've got, for example, like a sibling or a friend or whatever that's been in an accident and they find it hard, and reading your story sort of put them in a better mindset or change their mindset. So I guess there's that. But I mean, for people that do have accidents that are like similar age group to me, it's just, I don't know, find something that you love to do and stick at it. Like, my love was basketball. I love basketball, and you know, everybody feels good when they play sport. And if you get good at whatever it is you choose to do, it leads to a lot of opportunities, like traveling, this sort of thing. You can even make a career out of it. So yeah, I guess that's probably the biggest advice that I could give somebody that's just had an accident recently, or is someone of similar age, sort of thing.
Yeah. So just to kind of focus in on that a little bit, I guess, what was it about basketball specifically that took your interest?
I've always been pretty like sort of naturally gifted, I guess, at sport. And with like my level of injury, like, I love playing rugby. Wheelchair rugby was great fun. So I was this little 12, 13-year-old kid zipping around the court. And but then I found out that in terms of progressing in the sport, paraplegics are quite limited in how far they can go in rugby, and basketball was more of a sport for them to play. And I guess, yeah, I turned up to a training session when I was about 13, and yeah, really enjoyed it. And then, because it's just, you know, high pace, a lot of contact. I mean, it's quite a skillful sport. and I didn't really get serious till I was about 17, because I had, like I mentioned earlier, I had quite a few surgeries, which sort of stunted like the physical stuff that I could do.
Yeah.
So I had to sort of have a break. So I just held off until I just finished college, and that's really where I started to get quite good, I guess you could say, and where my love for the game started.
And you talked about this travel that's happened as a result. So am I to understand, are you representing New Zealand, or is it a regional?
Not currently. So what year were we in? 2020. So I was in the under-21s for New Zealand for a couple of years, and we went to Australia. We won a tournament over there. And that was the only thing we really did as the national team. And then I started training with the men's team. And then we went to China in 2018, I'd like to say. 2018. That was my first trip with the New Zealand team for the qualifiers. So, I'm not currently representing New Zealand because obviously I haven't played basketball for quite some time with like my car accident and COVID. So I haven't played for a wee while, but I want to get back into it. So I'll probably hold off for the rest of the year, start training pretty soon once the weather starts to warm up, and then hopefully get back into it next year.
Very good. That's great. Yeah, and look, I think a lot of people's plans per se have kind of been a bit thrown out of whack with recent circumstances, notwithstanding your car accident. So in terms of, I guess, going forward and experiencing life, I mean, you've obviously got a team that you've been playing with within basketball, and while there's particular circumstances in terms of their situation may differ, do you find that having that group of people who share some commonalities have helped from a support standpoint at all?
I guess so. We don't really talk about our disabilities, oddly enough. We kind of just relate, I guess you could say. We know what other people go through, being through yourself, but I've never really thought about that. I mean, we're all at different levels of injury. So some people can sort of just walk. We've got amputees, stuff like that. We're just real good mates, and we enjoy playing sport together. We have pretty similar interests, and I guess we never really thought about that. But I'm sure if I had any questions for any of them, they'd be happy to help because I'm the youngest one in our group.
Okay. Right. I was going to say you might have something to learn, but equally they might have something to learn from you. You know, it can work both ways in that regard. And one thing I've learned myself, I guess, in doing these podcasts is that there are some younger, I'm going to say younger, it's relative, people who have gone through a lot and have grown so much as individuals as a result. So despite their physical years, there's a maturity and an outlook on life that far surpasses that. So it's really good to see. I guess and this is perhaps a little bit difficult because it's taking a different perspective, but I mean, you talked about the support that your siblings have had for you during that time, and I guess that I'm going to call it fighter mentality that's been instilled from your family. For someone who perhaps has a family member or close friend who has sustained some kind of injury and is a little bit unsure how to, I'm going to say, be there for them in a sense, because they I don't know, struggling to relate in some way. Is there anything there that you could offer?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing probably to help, I know obviously they can't relate, but help them become more independent. Because I think, like, for me, and um, this is probably people that are similar injury to me, would be um, if you do something or everything for somebody whilst they can do it, you're not really helping them help themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, there's lots of ways you can reach out to different peoples that are in, well, especially in New Zealand, there's a lot of channels or groups that offer support. Like we've got various different sports organisations called Parafed across New Zealand. So each region sort of has their own. And yeah, there's just heaps of different support networks that if you're unsure or if you need help from people that are in similar circumstance, where you can get help from, I guess.
Cool. No, that's really good, and that's good to know. I mean, I can't speak personally of that situation, but you never know what I might be faced with in the future. And I guess if you had to leave the audience with anything, is there anything that you would like to offer that you perhaps haven't already?
I mean, it could always be worse, I guess. I'm pretty lucky. I'm only a para. Could have been a teacher. It could have been a lot worse. Could have lost the use of my whole body. I mean, I can still live my life pretty much to its fullest, with the exception of not being able to run, I guess. And yeah, I mean, I'm in a pretty happy place. I mean, it seems to be pretty reoccurring, but I like to think that I'm really lucky. So,
Yeah.
Ironic as that sounds, or I guess that's just my whole life, I guess, is just luck from unlucky things, or vice versa.
Yeah. and I think, you know, inevitably we don't necessarily determine the cards that we're dealt, but we have the opportunity as to how we play them.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's nothing I can do about it. Nothing that I can do that'll change what's happened. It is what it is. And yeah, that's it, I guess. I just don't think about it. Just do.
Yeah. And to be fair, thinking about it wouldn't change it. You know, so it's you're putting your time, your energy, your thoughts into. But I don't know if doing's the right word, but just being, you know, in this situation that you are. And for people who, I guess, often the struggle for people is based on their idea of what they want the situation to be like, when that isn't necessarily the reality of the situation. And I think you said it earlier, you know, you can kind of, you've got the option to sort of dwell on that, or you can just get on with life. If anything, I think that's really a great message that people can take from this. So listen, I do want to thank you again for really having the courage to put yourself out there, because, you know, in New Zealand we have a tendency to I don't know, the whole tall poppy syndrome, and cut each other down when we try and stand up and make ourselves heard. But those who perhaps don't often speak, when they do, it is really worth listening to what they have to say. So thanks again, Slade.
I don't think I'm the greatest speaker, but I try my best, I guess.
Yeah.
If it helps other people, then
yeah,
what can I ask for?
Absolutely.